Good morning, everyone. It looks like there are 26 folks on the Zoom call today for the NSF Career Workshop number 2. This is part of our NSF Career Workshop series to help pre-tenured faculty prepare for an NSF career proposal submission in July. I'm Tiffany Fleming. I'm part of the Office of Sponsored Programs Research Development team. I notice some friendly faces and names here in the group today. I often work with faculty on the educational and broader impacts components of their proposals. And today I have the pleasure of meeting some of you that are new to this process, as well as facilitating a conversation with the resources and individuals that are here on campus to support you in this proposal development process. This workshop, we have about an hour today. Thank you all for being here. And we'd like to share our idea of an idealized timeline and project management process for your proposals to help you get to the place of feeling very kind of confident and prepared to submit that proposal in July and to start the process as early as possible. So thank you for being here. The Office of Faculty Development and Diversity is a co-sponsor of this event. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to raise them and use the chat. We'd love to hear from you and make this as interactive as possible. And on that note, we'll get started. I just want to make sure that everyone is able to see my slides here. Just a thumbs up, great. So as I mentioned, this is part of a workshop series. The research development team and research administrators across campus work with faculty every year on these important foundational proposals. They're important to the tenure process and really launching your research careers and funding with the National Science Foundation. This year, we've added a variety of workshops each month to help you along the process, along this developmental process. We started in December and we'll wrap up in May, and we hope to see you here as well as in individual one-on-one meetings this semester. We do have resources on our website if you're not able to make any of these workshops. And the links are here. These slides will be provided to you. You can review the slides as well as any of the tools and templates that we mention here will be posted there for you to then download and work with as needed. So for today's agenda, we're really focusing on the NSF Career Grant and helping you to think about planning and process for this proposal. For many of you, this could be one of your first proposals, and it's a complex proposal in that it's not like any other NSF proposal that you will submit. We have a timeline that we'd like to share with you in terms of setting milestones for particular components of the proposal so that you have plenty of time to get reviews and feedback and support on each of those components from the resources that are here today. And we'll talk a bit about the proposal submission process and who you will work with to make sure that that happens on time and that it's compliant and accepted by NSF for review. So very briefly, I wanted to set the stage with the NSF Career Grant itself. And so here's the link to the solicitation and a reminder that all of the directorates at NSF share the same deadline. It's the final Thursday, Monday. It used to be on Thursday. I think it was on Thursday with the change in COVID, but July 25th, 2022 will be the deadline for all directorates. And just as a reminder, in terms of how this proposal is different from all others, it's really a faculty development plan as much as it is about your individual research project. So the idea here is that you are laying a foundation for taking on a leadership role in both research in your field and the education of future scientists in your field. So the idea here is that you are building a firm foundation for a lifetime of this work, where your education and research activities are very, very integrated and transformative over the course of your career. So ideally, the career grant proposal timeline is many months. And perhaps for some of you that attended our kickoff series in December, you heard folks say that they started writing earnestly a few months out, or perhaps a year out, or they had been thinking about these ideas for their entire kind of life. There's one person that really talked about the ideas that he wanted to move forward, or something that he's really been thinking about for a long time. When you finally are ready to sit down and pull these pieces together, we would recommend spend 6 to 8 months of really developing and moving through a process. And so what we've done is laid out some of the milestones here from January, from now until June, and in hopes that you will be ready to submit in July. And so we'll walk through this timeline today. And also what I wanted to point out is that for each month here, we have identified, kind of where you should be in terms of draft documents and connecting with partners and budget. And along with that, we will have workshops that discuss some of those topics in detail, where you can come and check in with us and ask questions, and do some of the work actually on those components of the proposal. So right now, this month, I hope that you've all read and reviewed the RFP, that you're starting to develop your idea for what you'd like to do as both a researcher and educator, and how that might start to grow over time. And you'll begin to write your pitch for this. So your research idea, what is the big and compelling idea? And let's dig into that a little more. So I think we started to break this out. In addition to reading the RFP, it's important to identify who the NSF directorate and the program officer that you will be corresponding with and reaching out to. It's also helpful, we talk about this idea of doing your due diligence. So reviewing career award abstracts, who has won in your area in the last couple of years. Look through those abstracts, what's being funded. Also within your departments, who has recently or not so recently won a career award that you might be able to talk with about your ambitions for NSF career. And then start to write this pitch. We do have a one-page template that can help you to think about what should be included, and that will be up on our website. And we may email that out as well as a follow-up to this workshop. But if you have questions, please let us know. Now is a great time to start engaging with your campus resources and support. So the RD team, your research administrator, your grant and contract officer, and your peers in your department. And we'd also recommend that as the semester starts to gear up, that you block out a few hours each week where you have scheduled weekly career time. It could be writing time, it could be this coordination time, just making sure that that's built in throughout the semester, so that we're not meeting with you in June and there's a lot that has to be done within a month, and it's really very difficult to put the project together if you wait. As we move into February, the idea is that you've had your project pitch, you've met with folks and gotten some feedback on that. I'll talk about that later, how you can work with research development to get feedback. You'll want to start taking on some of the bigger challenges. And we trust that many of you feel very confident about the technical aspects of your proposal and the research that you'd like to do. You have preliminary data and you have some big ideas in your field. There are other challenges that you'd want to take on early so they're not kind of tacked on at the last minute. And so reaching out to the program officer, right? If start that early, have the one pager ready and reach out and get some input on the research idea and the fit, and start to develop that relationship. Broader impacts is also another area that many people are not as familiar with. And so it's a great idea to tackle that challenge early as well. We will have workshops, I think in February, around broader impacts identity and a framework for you to develop that. And also encouraging you to think about what are the educational needs and challenges and opportunities within your field. This may be related to diversity, equity, inclusion, broadening participation, workforce development needs. So really begin to think, without honing in on a particular activity that you might do, but what are some of the bigger needs in your field in terms of educating the students that you have that you can really make an impact impact in a positive way. So those areas I would say are the challenges. As we move forward, by March, we'd like to encourage you to start writing the project summary. That one pager is really a critical document, and if you've worked with us in the past, you know that there's a lengthy revision process, and really honing that to be compelling, innovative, concise. It's one page. It's kind of your big research aspirations at a larger view down to kind of the smaller details of what you'll accomplish, and then their impacts in society and on students. So there's a lot in that one page, and getting that to be polished and engaging takes time. We encourage you to start writing that in March, and getting as much feedback as you can, and really developing that all the way through. The narrative writing, there are different components that you'll want to start thinking about: the structure of the proposal, how to organize all of these components, the research, the education, the impacts, the broadening participation. We've been talking quite a bit about the literature review, how to integrate, to demonstrate that you're kind of speaking to what's current in your field, and that you're moving something forward in your field, that your preliminary data is there. And also the budget and budget narrative, partnerships that you may have, research partnerships, educational partnerships, and all of the ancillary documents. So that will really start to come together this spring. So you'll need time. So carving out time for you to really think through this and to write. And you'll also need resources. And so what I'd like to do is kind of transition beyond that timeline, idealized timeline. We recognize that not everyone is able to do that. And so we also, before transitioning, I want to encourage you to think about using that timeline as a template, but then going back and thinking, what will I do each month? What can I do now? What is the piece of the proposal that I'm really ready to get down on paper? Or what is the component that I can handle or develop this month? And so to create your own timeline, recognizing that we will have this timeline as well, and we're happy to check in and help you kind of manage that kind of project development. So when we think about the components of a proposal, there's a lot to manage, and many people that will be involved. And so we'd like to encourage you to use the resources here to help you manage that complexity, especially on a campus like Cornell, where each department in college may have a slightly different way of handling and supporting you. And we know that some of you are here from CALS and engineering and humanities. And so what we'll share today are some general resources and principles. But feel free to ask questions if you're unsure about how these resources exist within your particular departments or colleges. I moved this slide around this morning. I'm sharing that with the team. So I think this is a very helpful graphic, and it sets up what we'll do in the next few moments, is that you'll have an opportunity to hear from each of these types of resources. So how we can support you and when you might want to engage with us for particular components of the proposal. So as I mentioned, the research development team is really here to help you on some of the strategic components of the proposal. What is the funder looking for? What kinds of proposals are most kind of successful in terms of particular funders, in this case, NSF Career, connecting you to resources beyond these administrative resources. The research administrator groups will be here to talk about budget and budget justification, working with your GCO. You'll also need to think about engaging your peers and your mentors, lining folks up that might be able to read your project summary and read your pitch and give some feedback, and your grant and contract officer, who will ensure a review at the end of this process and submit the proposal for you. So let's hear from each of these groups now, representatives. We'll start with research development, and Josephine Martel, who's the director of research development at CALS.
Hi, thanks, Tiffany. Hi, everybody. So many of you hopefully have worked with us already, but we're going to first just give you a quick overview of like what we do in general, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we can specifically help support your careers. So we're really here just to help you all successfully develop and launch your externally funded research careers so that you can be successful here at Cornell, but also so that you're successful as researchers making a positive impact in the world. So no big deal. We do this by offering trainings and mentoring programs, which some of you participated in. We work with you individually on crafting what are hopefully compelling and competitive proposals. As you know, we do a lot of editing and reviewing of multiple drafts. We're all happy to do that always. We can help you find effective collaborators and partners. And then we do a lot of just effectively trying to strategically position you with the federal funding agencies to find your kind of funding homes, which is a big part of kind of having a successful research career. We also, as Tiffany mentioned, kind of like bridge that gap. We kind of liaise between your research administrators or whoever your grants person is that you work with to build your applications, and your grant and contract officer, your GCO, and then yourself, or whether you have a team as well. So please come to us if you ever have any questions. We can certainly be your first stop and kind of direct you in the right way, and hopefully help kind of translate some of those things that are confusing, especially when you're first starting out. In terms of, thanks. In terms of the actual career, we can meet with you one-on-one. I encourage you to set up these appointments. There'll be a way to do that. We can sit down with you. We can go over your individual project. And as Tiffany said, the more time you give us, the better project we can help you develop. We can, initially what we'll do when we sit down is we'll hear what you have in mind. We'll kind of identify the things that we think that might make it stronger. We'll make sure that you're reaching the right scope for the career, which is making sure that you have both a teaching, a research, and an education component. So you have to be thinking about your broader impacts, but also how your research and kind of like your teaching career and your career development integrate. So it's really this three-prong approach. Will help you come up with either what we call a research one-pager, or perhaps it'll be a project summary at this point, but really stepping back and thinking like, what is the long-term impact of this project? What is the significance? Why is it so innovative and exciting in my field? That's something we definitely see for careers. They're a little bit different than a standard NSF proposal. It has to be a really innovative idea, and it has, you know, in your career has to really align with that idea, because this is an investment in you, hence the name, the career. So we'll work with you to help you identify who the right program officers are at NSF. It might be that you fit in a couple different directorates or a couple different programs. And so there's a lot of value, like Tiffany mentioned, to kind of start that process early and, you know, send out a couple project summaries or one-pagers, you know, send introductory emails, really try to find like, where is your home at NSF? And we can help you in that process all the way down to kind of helping you draft those first introductory emails. And ideally what you'll do is kind of set up 30-minute meetings with these program officers. They're super nice and easy to schedule with usually, and they'll be really happy to meet with you and kind of help you determine like where your project best fits at NSF. And so then beyond that, we'll like really just help you with the nuts and bolts of the project management of the proposal. Like there are a lot of pieces to this. You obviously need a departmental level letter, and we can help come up with ideas and language, and to make sure that you get a really strong departmental letter. We can make sure that you have a strong data management plan. We can, you know, we will review and edit many drafts of your proposal if it takes that, and just be here as a support to like really be giving you that kind of high level strategic feedback along the way, to make sure that you have the strongest proposal that you need when you're submitting.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions for Josephine or for the research development team? Okay, thank you. Let's learn a bit about the research administrator's role in supporting you in this process.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Liz. I'm Director of Sponsored Research at CALS, and I see an awful lot of familiar faces, so that's really great. At a very high level, because it really is dependent upon where you sit within the university. Your research administrator may be your finance manager in your home unit or your admin manager in your home unit. And sometimes those two roles are one desk, or maybe a specialized team. At a bare minimum, you can expect that your research administrator will be responsible for assisting with the development of the administrative portions of the proposal. So for some units, that looks like the budget and justification. And for other units, that may be setting up a record in the RAS system or setting up the application online. It just depends. So I would say that if you're interested, you're here because you're interested. Now is the time to reach out to your research administrator. If you have a dedicated team and know who you should be working with, you could reach out to them. But if you're uncertain at all, I would start with your finance manager or your unit admin manager. They will in turn contact your GCO, and Tammy's here. She's going to discuss a little bit about the GCO process. And so that we can make sure that your grant and contract officer knows that something's coming, can plan for review and submission of your application. So that's a real high level overview of research administration and how we help in this process. I think we're ready for the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Sugash on the engineering pro team to talk a little bit about RAS.
Hi, so I'm Sugash. I'm the team lead of the pre-award research operations team at the Office of Sponsored Programs. And so I deal a lot with this sort of research administration end of things. So RAS is, along with the proposal preparation of the actual proposal, so the budget and justification, and or possibly, you know, the administrative documents, the proposal package and the sponsor system and things like that, there is this additional piece that's required that the research administrator would typically deal with, and that is the RAS system. So RAS is sort of, it's Cornell's system for proposal and award management. It is our data repository for all proposal and award data. And so every time we work on a proposal, we would enter the information specific to that proposal, particularly with regard to the budget, any compliance issues that might be on the proposal. For example, if you're working with human subjects or vertebrate animals or anything of that nature, information about that, inclusive of, you know, protocol numbers and protocol statuses, would be in RAS. So your research administrator, whoever is working with you on the proposal preparation piece of this, would be able to assist you with getting all the information in there. Along with being Cornell's proposal and award data repository. RAS is the mechanism by which we would route the proposal to get the internal approvals necessary for the GCO to be able to submit the proposal. So there's typically two levels of approval that are necessary. One would be what's known as a PI attestation, wherein the PI would log in, sign off on an attestation statement, and indicate that they are in fact eligible to be receiving an award under the terms and conditions laid out in the RFP. So that would be one piece. The other place that it would get routed to would be to your departmental approver. This could be either your department chair. It could also be an admin manager. Different departments handle it a little bit differently, but it's all programmed into the RAS system. So you don't actually have to worry about who's in there. Once your name goes in as PI, your departmental approval will be assigned automatically. So what would happen is, as you prepare the proposal, once it's ready for all these reviews and approvals, your research administrator would get the information into RAS and they would submit it for both your attestation, your department chair's approval, and review by the grant and contract officer. Once the grant and contract officer receives the RAS record upon release, they will be able to start going into the proposal and reviewing the various components that are uploaded already. Can I get the next slide, please? Oh, thank you. There are some tutorials available with regard to RAS that are online. The links here are actually pretty valuable. If you have a second, you may want to take a look into them. Specifically the PI attestation guide. This might help you the first time around if you have never approved a proposal or provided your attestation in RAS before. Along with the PI attestation, there's a whole user guide, which is the third link on this page, which for whatever reason, if you happen to be the one putting your proposal into RAS, that user guide will probably be quite useful for you. The RAS team is of course available for all support with regard to RAS. If there are any questions while you're in RAS, or if you get a strange error screen or anything like that, the email address at the bottom is where you would want to reach out. I'm going to turn it over to Liz to talk about Science CV. Thank you.
All right, so something also very important, something you should start now as opposed to later, is getting into Science CV. So there are a couple things here. Almost everybody at this point has an ORC ID. We don't have a slide on ORC ID, but if you're unfamiliar, you can certainly send any of us an email and we're happy to help you with that. Most academics now do have an ORC ID. The other system that we recommend that you register with is Science CV. So this system was created by NCBI to help faculty manage their biographical sketch and current and pending information. There's some hope that eventually you will also be able to manage your collaboratives and other affiliations. NSF has partnered with NCBI to use this system. You can keep your biographical sketch on file. You can make little tweaks. You can add and delete references or publications directly from your ORC ID database. You can link this to other systems, including ORC ID, but I believe there are other systems this can also be linked to. And it ensures that your biographical sketch and your current and pending documents are in the format required by the NSF when you go to submit your career. So I highly recommend that people register for this system. And if you go to the next slide, we've provided some links on some tutorials. Oh, we have a little more here. So this is actually the landing page. It is an NCBI landing page, but you're in the right place. Click here to start. At the bottom there, you see that blue box. You can use your NIH Assist ERA login or your NSF login. Both will work. They bring you to the same page. And that is where you'll manage your biographical sketch and your current and pending support. We do also, though, within our RAS system, have a very robust current and pending support feature. So it may be here at Cornell that you largely use Science CV to manage your biographical sketch and use our system to manage current and pending support, but either can be used and they're both appropriate for the NSF. Next slide, please. So these are 2 tutorials: how to build a biographical sketch using Science EV and how to build your current pending support using Science EV. So I highly recommend, again, that people register for this system, that they use it. Anytime a colleague writes you and says, hey, can you do a little work on this, DRMS I'm applying for? And you say, yes, I can actually. And even if the turnaround's really quick, you've got a biosketch ready to go. So it's a really nice way to keep track of the different changes and versioning within your biosketch and to tailor it for different aspects of your research program. And that's it.
Thank you. So any questions for the research administrators here from CALS and engineering? Yep. Okay. Let's hear from Tammy Custer, Grants and Contract Officer in OSP.
Hi there, everyone. So you've heard a lot about what has to be, all the things that need to be done, and you're going to hear us repeat several of the things because they are critical. One of the critical things is the solicitation that we've been talking about. The reason why it's very important that we know about the solicitation is that guides us, meaning yourself, your research team, and the Office of Sponsored Programs, as to what is required to submit this proposal successfully. And we like to see this early because we need to read through it to see what is going to be required. One thing that we have learned over the years working with many of the federal agencies is every year solicitations change. So what we worked with last year is going to be totally different this year because rules are changing as the government goes on. And we always have to make sure that we have all of those requirements in place because we don't want a proposal to be declined because of something very simple that has changed that we just didn't have time to catch. The other thing that's very important is every system now has a requirement where you have to log in to do anything. So it's critical that you get registered with research.gov early so that there are no problems and that you can start your proposal. Without a registration, we cannot even start the proposal to keep going with it. Most of you will have your research administrative offices. If not, you work with your grant contract officer and the Office of Sponsored Programs, and we will guide you on building your proposal along with the research actions that are out there for you to take advantage of, which there are, as you'll see on these slides. My office, we are authorized by the VP for Research to sign on behalf of the university. That means that we are allowed to negotiate terms and conditions. We are allowed to contract in with the federal agencies. What my office does is we will look everything over to make sure that your proposal is in compliance and that it doesn't jeopardize the university or any way, or jeopardize you in any way, that you lose anything by going through with an agreement. We ask that you give us 5 full business days to review, because where there's only you working on a project, there have been days that I've had to submit 19 proposals out. And it helps us if we get them in advance so we can look them over and give you time to make changes as we see them. We will review them as quickly as we can and provide you as much information as we can. I have been working with the National Science Foundation since 1992, so I can go through and look at something very quickly and see what's going on. But we have other people that are still just coming into it, so it's going to take them time to do everything. So we really ask that you get it to us early so that we can help you in every way possible to make this an amazing proposal and to get funded for your research.
I might add something actually that I meant to say and I had forgotten to. So when we were prepping for this meeting, we discussed that last year there was somewhere between 40 and 100 applicants to this program only. We're a very large university, and that includes Cornell Tech down in NYC. So my advice would be not to wait until deadline day to upload that final paper and those final references. It's a first come, first served situation on deadline day. In addition to those 40 plus that we may be submitting on that 4th Monday in July, there may also be other programs that have deadlines. So just a word of caution to be prepared, to submit earlier than 5 p.m. The system shuts down at 5 p.m. So we really need to make sure that everybody gets a chance to get in before the deadline and have an opportunity for peer review. So that would just be my PSA for this moment.
Thank you. I was actually starting to get ready to say that. And the other thing to keep in mind is we are on the East Coast. So in the mornings, it's just the East Coast overall working. Come about noon, you've got East Coast and West Coast coming in at the same time trying to use the system. NSF has a ruling that if you are submitting on the last day and it doesn't get in because of sluggishness, that is the responsibility of the individual and the organization. That is not an issue with NSF. NSF will be the issue is if their system is having a problem, then they will extend the deadline, but otherwise last minute, they will not. And just to give an example, just this morning, I received an email from Jean Feldman, who's the head of policy at the National Science Foundation. She sent us out giving us an updated version of the biographical sketches and current pending supports. We just got it this morning. So it's constantly changing. There are things that are going to be changing all the time. So we always need to be abreast of what's going on with the forums, the solicitation. The solicitations can quickly change if there's an issue. We have to look at all of that when we're working on deadlines. It's not just a one person show for this. It is a village that is getting this proposal ready and to make it the best for you.
Thank you,
Any questions?
Tammy.
Y'all know where to find me.
So this is an image of the review that Tammy and other GCOs will provide. A full review, as she mentioned, the 5 days, and you will be able to get a full review. Or if it's late, right, there's less and less that the GCOs will be able to do for you. Did you want to say anything more about that, Tammy?
No, this is very straightforward. And the thing to keep in mind is it's 5 full business days. And also NSF has the deadline of 5 p.m. and the system will shut down at 5 p.m. and it'll say that your proposal did not get in. You must keep in mind the 5 p.m. deadline is for us to get it submitted. So if we receive this proposal late in the afternoon of the deadline, we take that risk that it may not make it in time for the deadline.
I would also add that in RAS, once that RAS record is set up, you as PI have access to that record at any time to see how it's progressing. And on the sponsor information panel in that record, it actually tells you what the date you need it to get to OSP for full review, what the date is for limited review, and so on down the line. So it will give you that once you get everything set up in RAS and have the deadline marked in RAS, there'll be a timeline there, and then you'll know exactly what that date should be to get it over to Tammy's team.
So here's a question in the chat. Thank you, Liz and Tammy and Sue. This may be for all of us. I'm not sure if it's specific to the GCO, but if we do not follow the timeline, can we still work with you? So if someone is later than 5, if someone is submitting on day 2, we still work with them. Does anyone want to add to that?
If you don't get it to us, we're not going to do it. No, I'm kidding. we are there with you until the very end. It just depends on the research administration side. They will have their timelines of what things can get to you. We're the Office of Sponsor Program. We are there till the end, but we may not be able to respond as quickly or help you in as more detail the closer you get to the deadline, because we are on a limited schedule. If it's a heavy deadline day, we have to try to work with everyone that has those deadlines and meet everyone's requirements to get them submitted. So we might not be able to give you as much of our time and one-on-one if you're submitting just before the deadline than if you're doing 5 business days before.
And if I may comment from the research development perspective on that question, you may not want to start working on your proposal for a couple more months. For some people, if they're teaching the semester, their time may be a little bit more condensed. But Having said that, we still do recommend that you, as Tiffany suggested early on, we do recommend that you start doing whatever you can as early as possible so that you are not backloading the process to an extent that it may prevent you actually being successful. Our experience has shown over and over again that successful proposals can't be done in the last month. You can't wait until to start writing or start thinking about it or start building broader impacts. It really doesn't work. So as we said, this is not like any other proposal. It actually requires quite a bit more of your time and effort and thought processes. And the more people that you can bring into that process, the better for you. So we encourage you to engage with us early so that we can help you work on a timeline that would work for you. And also do keep in mind, Tammy said it, but I'm going to say it a little bit more strongly. It's not to your advantage to push it to the deadline. Mistakes do happen in applications. The validation process that happens at the end of the process finds errors. And if you don't end up having enough time to correct any errors, that's on you. The system only works if you give it time to work. So certainly throughout my career working with career faculty, I've always recommended that you have your final proposal done 2 days ahead of the final deadline. That will eliminate a lot of stress on the whole process on the research.gov system and make sure that the proposal gets in on time. Last year, for those of you who are resubmitting this year, you will remember that research.gov went down on the last day, and it was a very stressful experience for everybody involved. They did end up extending the deadline, but as Tammy said, there's no guarantee that they're going to do that because we don't always know what the problem is. So anyway, that's my 20 cents is work way ahead of the deadline if you can.
And as you said, Carmel, it went down. And a lot of times, because research.gov, they're trying so fast to get the system fixed again that we may not know about the extension until after the 5 p.m. And by then we have totally all freaked out. Also, the IT part, research.gov, does not have the authority to extend a deadline. They have to go back to the division or the directorate to get the permission to extend the deadline. And if it's a system issue, yes, they normally get it. I mean, but they can't just say, we're going to extend it. They have to go back to higher ups to get the permission to extend the deadline. So it takes time for that.
Thank you. There's another question about
Yes,
on the opposite end. Is there an earliest date to submit given that requirements change?
So I would say no. So I also thought it might be good to clarify that the 5-day review is for your grant and contract officer, but you should be working with your administrative assistants as soon as possible. So I would say it's never too early because it's easier to make slight changes in things to make sure they're compliant than it is to rebuild things at the last minute. So that would be my answer to that question. The other thing that I thought might be good to note is it's worth setting up your application in research.gov early. It's also worth trying to upload a draft that appears complete early. Just give it a try because there are many validation errors, margin errors, figures that the figure box is slightly outside, metadata in your document. And this is a very finicky system, so it can't hurt to upload those things and just give it a try and see if they're going to be compliant so that you don't find out the day before the deadline that you have to reformat your document in some way.
Thank you. So there are questions about finding career abstracts. You can go to the NSF career website. I have gone through, and you can look by directorate, by state. If you're having trouble, maybe we can send you a link. I think we do include in the first workshop, there's a link in the slides, but that might be hard for you to sift through. But NSF Career specifically will then have a panel where you can review abstracts by directorate, by state, by university. Thank you, Liz, for sharing that link there. Can we share successful applications from Cornell is another question. In general, it's possible. We do have a small library where researchers have approved that a portion that their proposals can be shared. Generally, it's the narrative, not the budgets. But we would often encourage you, because this is such a unique proposal, it's unique in terms of your career aspirations and your aims and your educational situation. You may be focused on grads or undergrads, that we really recommend that you kind of start your process because it is such a unique proposal. Another thing we recommend, though, is reaching out to your chair or mentors in your department. Look to see on that career website who in your department has won NSF career, and asking those faculty members directly if they wouldn't mind sharing with you or talking with you. We find that you generally have better success reaching out to peers and asking than we might on your behalf. And some folks are really happy to do that, especially folks that have maybe not recently won the career in your department, but maybe several years back might be good candidates to share with you. Broader impacts, yes. We have a lot of resources on that we'll be getting into next month in February. I specialize and focus on that, so work with faculty to develop their individualized plans and really to think through what you might do and how to connect all the resources and pieces that you're most interested in, and do a lot of review of that writing in terms of making sure that the broader impacts is integrated and compelling.
May I piggyback on that, Tiffany?
Yes, please.
So one thing about broader impacts and really about the whole application is that it really needs to represent you and your unique ideas and what is innovative and special about your approach to your work. And unlike other NSF applications, I really do find that it can be somewhat helpful to see what others have written, and how they've written it, but the truth of the matter is that the broader impacts piece in particular is going to be completely unique to the researcher. So I never know how really helpful it is to see others if you're looking for an example of how to write one, because it really will be significantly impacted by what you want to do. And that's where Tiffany comes in and can really help with with conceptualizing what the broader impacts piece should look like and the different components it may have. So again, that's an area where working early with us and attending the workshops related to broader impacts would be tremendously helpful for you.
Are there any other questions?
I see Joeva has her hand raised.
Hi, just a really general question. I think maybe it has already been discussed, but I always have difficulty selecting a program officer. So I'm relatively new to NSF, and I know for NIH, there's a really nice tool where you can just drop in your abstract and it will match you to a program officer that's the most applicable for your research project. And I'm just kind of sifting through NSF, and I know early on, right, like you should be kind of thinking about connecting with your program officer and pitching your idea. How would you recommend we navigate that, especially for relatively new to NSF, to find the right person who can understand the project? For me, I will just say my biggest challenge is a lot of my projects are very, very health-based, disease focused, and I do know there's the opportunity to transition and sort of shift your writing style, but I do need a program officer who's be very familiar with like my sort of model to sort of guide me throughout that process. Any recommendations that you may have would be appreciated. Thanks.
I'm happy to answer this to start, and anyone else can please chime in. I'd say, Joey, I'll give some advice now too, but also please feel free to reach out and we can kind of, I'm happy to work with you and kind of we can go through that process on a very individual level. NSF doesn't have the great like matchmaking tool. But you can go to each directorate and you kind of just have to do some more digging. So once you kind of get to the main page, you then can browse projects funded by the program. You can look down and see who the program officers are and kind of look up. It's kind of like a lot of footwork. So first you kind of have to go through all the recently funded projects and see which projects kind of align with your type of work. And if it doesn't look like they align in your work, then you kind of look to another program. Once you find a place where it seems like your work might fit, then you kind of have to go through the individual program officers for each program. And again, kind of do a little bit of research and look up their profiles and see where they, where their own background is. And then we kind of go through this, what can be a slightly time consuming process of individually reaching out to each program officer, sending them initially I recommend just a short email that has a paragraph that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what my project is about. So maybe a paragraph and a half tops in an email. See if they're interested in talking. If they are, at that point, either you can send them a one-page research overview or a project summary, or just ask for a meeting on the phone for 30 minutes. That's a great, sometimes you send that one-pager in your first contact to give them a little more detail and information. But generally it's starting a conversation. So you kind of have to do that upfront work, which is a little more time consuming with NSF and NIH, to find a couple programs where you think your work might fit, and then really get that detailed feedback from each program officer. But I'm happy to we can get on a Zoom for 15 minutes and just kind of, now or whatever it takes, and just figure out where are the places where you'll be most competitive and kind of which ones to target, if that helps.
That's awesome. Thank you.
If I missed anything, anybody else, please jump in.
I think that's a great place to start with that. Let's move. We're nearly out of time. We're coming to the final slides, and thank you so much for your questions. We wanted to just provide a summary of kind of the workflow here. So now that you've met the different groups, RD, RA, GCOs, how do we all come together to kind of support you in this from idea to submission? And Sue wanted to kind of talk about this graphic.
Yes, so just to preface the spiel here, which I'm going to go through very quickly in the interest of time, but just to preface, the workflow here is sort of a very generalized, idealized workflow. Obviously, when proposal development for your particular proposal starts, there may be complexities that cause this workflow to become a little bit muddled. So, the budget, for example, there's this little spot in the middle that talks about the RA and PI collaborating to prepare a budget and justification. Once that piece is over, technically we would start to work on the other administrative documents, but sometimes as you work on your technical piece of the proposal, you may realize that there's something that hasn't been addressed in the budget that has now come up as a necessity, and so the process might go back to that middle. So this is not exactly a linear process as it appears here. And having said that, I'll go through the linear process. So as you can see, there's a workflow here. The light colored boxes, as opposed to the darker colored ovals, the light colored boxes are basically within the purview of your research administrator. So the first thing that would happen is you would identify a funding opportunity, which of course you've done already. It's the NSF career funding opportunity. And once you've done that, you would want to notify your research administrator. As my colleague Liz mentioned in an earlier slide, if you don't know who that person is, you may want to ask your departmental finance manager or director of administration, and they will be able to point you to the right person. Once you let them know what you're doing, the RA will typically go through the RFP, make note of any complexities associated with it. They will also they will reach out to the GCO. And if you are working with a team of research administrators, so this particularly applies to engineering, Cornell Tech, CALS. There's a whole bank of research administrators who work with these particular colleges. You will also be assigned a specific research administrator at that point. And so once all this goes on, The research administrator will usually provide you what's known as a summary of required elements or summary of proposal elements. It looks basically like a checklist. It's a proposal checklist. On there, it'll have information about what documents will be required, typically who is responsible for those documents, and maybe a proposed timeline for when we are targeting these things to be done so that they can be incorporated into the proposal in time for a timely submission to the GCO for review. Once there's a proposal checklist ready, the RA will start working with you on the budget, and justification tends to be the earliest piece that we would start with. It is the thing that often requires a fair amount of iteration to come to a final. It is also a very vital piece of the proposal. So that's where we usually kick off. After that, and the budget conversation tends to go on for a while. It's not a thing that happens on its own. It happens in parallel with a number of other things. After that, the RA may be able to help you draft your administrative ancillary documents. For example, the NSF requires a current and pending statement. They'll be able to help you sort that out. They may be able to help you, like, if given enough time, they could help you format citations for your bio sketch. Depending on what your RA does, like, you may be able to get or help for these sort of ancillary documents. There's a number of ancillary documents that are required. The RA most specifically deals with the current and pending support statement, but they'll be able to, like, work with you on the other things, at least to get formatting and stuff like that, right? In addition, the RA will be starting the proposal within the NSF submission system. This could be research.gov or Fastlane. They would also be responsible for uploading documents once they're ready to the sponsor submission system, so that the proposal gets compiled in the system in which it's ultimately going to be submitted. Once everything is ready in the sponsor submission system, whether in draft format for the technical pieces or in final format, the GCO will be able to start review on the proposal just to make sure that all of the regulatory requirements are being met, and also they'll take a look at your budget, make sure the numbers add up, things like that, assuming you give them enough time for that full review. So those 5 full business days that Tammy mentioned earlier, you will get a full granular review of that proposal. We really recommend that that proposal is sent out to GCO for review. That box happens at least 1 week before the deadline, 5 business days. At that time, when it's released, the proposal will also be making its way through the RAS system for approvals and attestations by the PI and the department. Once the GCO has it hit their plate and they finish their review of it, they will typically put together a series of notes with regard to things that may need to be edited or adjusted, and send that back to the PI and the research administrator so that those things can be addressed in the proposal package itself. Once those review notes are edited or review notes are addressed, we would let the GCO know, and they would ultimately submit to the sponsor. So this would be the sort of workflow that happens between you and your research administrator, but research development also will come in at times within this process. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Tiffany describe what goes on there.
So we would encourage you, I know we're just over time now, and I don't want to keep you, but we would encourage you to connect with the research development at the Central Campus and OSP with myself and the folks that have the blue screens here, or if you're in CALS, to connect with Josephine. We do help faculty identify funding opportunities to evaluate, as we talked about earlier, if this is the right opportunity and the right time for you to go for career. And then a lot of the coordination that happens throughout for each of the pieces. We will support you primarily in the non-technical elements of the proposal writing. So is it concise? Is it clear? We are an educated lay audience that we have backgrounds in science and in other disciplines. And so we can read the proposal for clarity, for areas that might need to be refined. And we will connect you with partners, broader impacts partners, community-based organizations, or help you to figure out how to navigate that. So connect with us early as well. We're really delighted that you've all spent the time to connect on this process to really figure out how to do that, the nuts and bolts, and the people that can support you. And we want to say thank you for being here today. Follow up with us. Notify your RA and GCA if you're going through. Mark your calendar. You want to have this in 5 days before, so you have a full review with the GCO July 18th. If everything is in by then smooth sailing for you and for all of us. And notify folks in your department. Maybe plan to schedule to meet with them once you've refined some of the ideas in March and April, so that you can have someone in your corner in the department that's really going to be a champion in supporting you in getting this proposal submitted and awarded. Our contact information is here. You will have these slides in your inbox shortly. Gail will be reaching out to you with a copy of the slides, also who you need to contact in particular colleges in terms of your research administration and departmental administrator. That is here as well. Thank you for your questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Next month, February, broader impacts. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.